The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has reached a pivotal moment. After months of a brutal stalemate, with Russia launching relentless attacks and Ukraine fiercely defending its territory, a new development has shifted the dynamics of the war. Until now, Ukraine had been constrained in its use of Western weaponry, avoiding direct strikes on Russian soil to prevent further escalation. But that restraint has ended. With approval from President Joe Biden and NATO allies, Ukraine has now launched attacks into Russian territory, including the strategic Kursk region. This bold move raises crucial questions about Putin's next steps and the future of the war. Let's explore what this change means for the conflict. What's up in Kursk? On August 6, 2024, Ukraine's army crossed into Russia for the first time, breaking through Russian defenses between Kursk and Ukraine. The breakthrough initially went unreported as media outlets awaited Russia's response, which never materialized. By August 7th, The Guardian reported that Ukrainian forces advanced up to 14.5 kilometers into Kursk Oblast, using a highway near Sverdlyakovo to make the incursion. Russian sources confirmed the intrusion, though Russia initially claimed it had been neutralized, later reversing this after further reports showed ongoing operations. Ukraine's actions were larger than initially claimed, with Le Monde stating that 1,000 Ukrainian troops, 10 tanks, and 20 armored vehicles entered Kursk, supported by 2,000 soldiers. Despite Russia's claim to have destroyed 50 armored vehicles, media reports cast doubt on this, as Ukrainian forces continued their advance, capturing towns like Gornal and Daryuno. The capture of the Sudza gas station, crucial to Russia's energy exports, was particularly damaging. Russian authorities declared a state of emergency in Kursk as Ukraine's military actions disrupted Russian operations. Ukraine's bold move marked a significant shift in the war, with Ukrainian forces continuing to push further into Russian territory. Despite Russian claims of destruction, Ukrainian forces held their position, even capturing Russian soldiers. This unexpected escalation, alongside reports of ongoing fighting, has left President Putin in a difficult position, having failed to prevent Ukraine from seizing Russian land. Why did Ukraine pick Kursk? Ukraine briefly gained control of 20 small Russian communities and a key gas station in Kursk, sparking questions about why Kursk was chosen for the incursion. According to the Institute for the Study of War, by August 7th, Ukraine had breached at least 2 of Russia's defense lines, with satellite images and geolocation footage confirming control of the Sudsugas distribution station and the capture of detainees. The White House, after reviewing these developments, contacted Ukraine's leadership to understand the objectives behind the attack. While the U.S. supports measures to curb Russian aggression, the strategic importance of Kursk itself remains unclear. The region is sparsely populated, with 1061 million people across 30 square kilometers, and primarily agricultural. The gas station, though significant, has likely been underused during the war. Kursk's mountainous terrain might offer some tactical advantages, but a 1,000-strong force seems insufficient for a larger invasion. Ukraine's goal as it advances into Kursk? Ukraine's advance into Kursk raises questions about its long-term goals, as the region's strategic value alone doesn't justify a permanent occupation. According to the BBC, Donetsk may be the real target. Donetsk has symbolic and practical significance for Russia, given its ethnic Russian population and historical ties to the country. Since 2014, Russia has heavily invested in controlling Donetsk, sending tens of thousands of troops and building a fortified front line. Mikhail Zhorokov, a military analyst, suggests that the Kursk incursion has forced Russia to shift forces from Donetsk, weakening its defenses in the region. This diversion strategy may be part of Ukraine's broader plan to weaken Russia's hold on Donetsk by drawing attention and resources away from the area, giving Ukrainian forces a chance to regroup and counterattack. Ukraine's incursion into Kursk could also be a calculated move to challenge Russia's front lines and show that it can strike deep into Russian territory. With Western support, including U.S. arms, this action might not violate U.S. policy, but serves to stretch Russia's defenses. Moreover, the move could be a negotiating tactic, demonstrating Ukraine's resolve and signaling to Russia the growing international backing for its actions. The bargaining. Putin was reportedly ready to finish the Ukraine war with a negotiated truce that recognized the battle lines in May 2024. Russia would undoubtedly begin discussions to reclaim the Ukrainian territory it controls after that truce. That would have taken Luhansk, Donetsk, Mariupol, and much of the Donbass. Russia had negotiation power. Despite its shaky invasion of Ukraine, it had gained land and was ready to conclude the war by claiming it permanently. According to Reuters, numerous Kremlin officials believe Putin would push for these talks. One of the 5 it spoke to said Putin can fight forever, but also wants a truce to stop the war. At a May press conference in Belarus, Putin said, "Let them resume," when discussing discussions. However, conversations must be based on ground realities to resume. Russia would halt if Ukraine cedes territory. The worst part was that Ukraine had no negotiation leverage. Ukraine has leverage after capturing 20 settlements and a Kursk gas distribution infrastructure. Ukraine may have taken this region to keep. If so, more forces will enter Kursk in the following days. Ukraine dispatched 2,000 more to reinforce the 1,000 who entered and took further territory. Ukraine has some leverage to negotiate a ceasefire if Russia and Ukraine negotiate while it holds this land. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky may offer Putin Kursk in exchange for part of Ukraine's land Russia has taken. That method may work, but Russia's willingness to negotiate while Ukraine holds some of its land is unclear. What's next? This leads to this video's final big question. What's next? Russia's response was one. Alexei Smirnov, the oblast's governor, proclaimed an emergency after the Kursk invasion. He said the measure was needed to prevent enemy forces from entering the region. The BBC reported that Russia sent fighter jets to search Kursk for Ukrainian soldiers following air alarms. This clip supports Mikhailo Zharkov's claim that Russia was diverting fighter jets from Donetsk to address the Kursk issue. Ukrainian officials are as inquisitive as everyone else about the incursion's reasons. On Facebook, Ukrainian parliamentarian Alexei Honcharenko said land was taken but didn't know the plot. However, he said it would prove Europeans and Americans Russia can and should be attacked. Again, back Ukraine is breaching more red lines. This is the first time an opposition force has invaded Russian territory since World War II. Honcharenko notes that Putin did not use nukes. Ukraine is demonstrating that the world should not fear escalation or another Putin humiliation. Despite his wartime threats, including the use of tactical nuclear weapons, red lines have been breached. He has Ukrainian troops in his region and hasn't acted on his threats. Is he smart enough to recognize that nuclear war would start World War III? Is he not following through on his threats because he knows Russia can't handle a NATO-US conflict after depleting itself in Ukraine? After 4 years as Russia's first deputy prime minister, Andrei Belousov became defense minister in May 2024. He confronts his first significant test. Passing the test appears to involve helping the Kremlin transform the incursion into pro-Russian propaganda. Putin led this effort, alleging on the second day of the incursion that Ukraine's actions were a significant provocation and that its soldiers were firing indiscriminately at civilians, their homes, and Kursk's public facilities. Those claims remain unconfirmed. Russia has militarily moved forces into Kursk to stop the Ukrainian assault, but their success is questionable. Russia's Chief of General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, says Russia is destroying the enemy along the Russian-Ukrainian border. That ambiguous statement implies that Ukraine is still in Kursk and Russia hasn't repelled its 1,000 soldiers. Telegram, Russia's most popular social media channel, disputes these public claims of pushing back Ukraine, making the Kremlin's assertions worse. Several pro-war stations on the network say Russia is in worse shape than officials say. Rybar reports that Ukrainian units are approaching towns and the situation is worsening. Again, such accusations remain unconfirmed. We know the Ukrainian military is in Kursk, but we don't know how successful they are after conquering villages and the gas distribution facility. Claims of captured Russian soldiers add to the uncertainty. Ukraine released drone footage of 32 arrested Russian soldiers on August 9th, according to the Kyiv Independent. Telegram posts indicate 8 more were out of frame. The assertions continued, but they provided another example of unsubstantiated claims. Kursk indicates a shift in Ukrainian tactics. For nearly 2 years, it has fortified its land to protect against gradual Russian incursions. That strategy killed Russia. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense reports 5885 Farcero deaths since the war began. But Zelensky isn't satisfied with cutting Putin's seemingly endless troop flow into Ukraine. By invading Kursk, Ukraine has shown its willingness to attack, which will shock Russia as Putin understands his country is no longer safe behind the Ukraine battle lines. That change in approach could hurt Ukraine long term. That may be especially true in Africa, where the BBC says Ukraine is seeking supporters in the fight with Russia. Mali and Niger have suspended diplomatic ties with Ukraine in the last 3 days, allegedly following a Ukrainian military official's suggestion that Ukraine may have killed several dozen Malian soldiers in July 2024. Fighting al-Qaeda-linked insurgents, those servicemen and Wagner Group mercenaries were slain. After the battle, Andrei Yusov said the separatist rebels the Malian soldiers engaged received the information they needed to attack, an unfounded claim that caused Mali, Niger, and Senegal to suspend ties with Ukraine when Ukrainian forces entered Kursk. Ukraine called Mali's action short-sighted and rushed, but claimed it accords with international law. The Kremlin may have pressured all 3 to do so. Maybe Ukraine wasn't involved in killing Malian troops. Russian influence-based politics may return as it deems Ukraine the aggressor and uses the Kursk incursion to prove it. Russia scores a propaganda success as Ukraine loses 3 prospective African allies or nations with which it may strengthen diplomatic ties. That's speculation, but Ukraine's different approach to Russia could have larger repercussions. Russia didn't plan Ukraine's new actions. None of this is. A short, fast, and destructive special military operation in Ukraine was planned. Russia is losing land to a country it's seeking to conquer after a protracted battle that has cost it hundreds of thousands of soldiers and tons of military equipment. Allowing Ukraine to fight Russia directly changed the war. The Kursk attack sent a significant message to Moscow and could influence the strategy and result of this battle. Russia and Ukraine's responses to fresh developments are closely watched. Will this decide the Ukraine war?